There is something wrong. I don't know what happened or what's going on, but I need help figuring it out. This may be my last chance. Here are the events leading up. June 28, 2020. It was a usual night. I arrived home from work around 7 p.m., had dinner with my wife, and a few hours later we were ready for bed. We were watching television, and my eyes started to slowly open and fall shut as one of those late-night infomercials played. There was a loud knock on the door. I jolted awake and looked at the clock. 11:52 p.m., who could it be at this hour? I thought to myself. I passed by the television, which had turned to static. I knew I should have fixed that damn satellite, I muttered. I slipped on my house shoes and headed down the stairs to the door. One more knock. I'm coming, I said, groggily. I opened the front door. No one was there. The only sound I could hear was the old grandfather clock ticking in the living room. Hello, I said as I poked my head out to look around. No answer. I closed the door and locked it. God, I must be so tired that I'm hearing things. I tried to convince myself as I rubbed my eyes. I eventually went back up the stairs and climbed into bed. My wife still sleeping peacefully next to me. I drifted back to sleep. I woke up to my wife shaking me. Honey, wake up, there's someone here. There was an aggressive pounding on the front door. Louder than before. It was continuous. What the hell? I exclaimed and sat up. I looked at the clock. 1:07 a.m., I angrily marched down the stairs. I pulled open the door in a hurry. Once again, no one was there. Look, I don't know who you are or what you want, but if you knock on my door again I'm calling the cops, I shouted into the darkness. I closed the door and headed back upstairs. Who was it, honey? My wife asked timidly. No one. I think it's someone playing a prank. Let's just try to get some sleep, okay? I fell asleep with my arms wrapped around my wife. I woke up staring at the clock. 3 a.m., the pounding on the door began again. This time even louder and faster than before. It got to a point where it sounded like they were about to break down the door. My wife woke up screaming. Oh, you've got to be kidding me, I furiously yelled. I fumbled around for my phone and dialed 911. Suddenly, the pounding stopped. The only thing that could be heard was my phone trying to make the call. The floor above us started creaking. Someone or something was in the attic. The phone picked up. We're sorry, but the number you have dialed is not in service at this time. What the hell? The door to our room began opening slowly by itself. My wife started crying quietly. Something I couldn't make out due to the darkness crawled into the room and stopped at the foot of our bed. It wasn't exactly human, but definitely wasn't an animal. I slowly made my way to the end of the bed, my breath and body shaking. The creature stood up and I stumbled back. It was tall and bony with lanky arms, black eyes, and long, stick-like fingers. It opened its mouth to expose jagged teeth and let out a shrill, ear-piercing scream. I watched in horror as it lunged at my wife and slit her throat. I still remember the sound she made as she choked on her own blood. I will never forgive myself for not protecting her better. Oh my God! I screamed as I fell off the bed. The creature was focused feeding on her body. I ran downstairs to the kitchen, and heard it treading after me. I grabbed the biggest butcher knife from the holder. Not soon after, the creature skidded into the kitchen. It approached me slowly. It leaned in, its face only inches from mine as it sniffed me. I stared into its eyes. They were void of any life or human characteristics. The creature let out a scream as it lifted its arm to strike me. I began stabbing it over and over. It still screamed as the knife plunged in and out of its body. I dropped the knife, out of breath, and ran outside. I screamed bloody murder as I ran down the street trying to get anyone's attention. No one ever came to help. The neighborhood was empty. The door to every house was open, but no one was home. It's like they all just got up and left. All homes and businesses were vacant. I eventually gave up from exhaustion and headed back home. The creature was gone. I don't know where it went. The only sign of it was the black blood it left on the kitchen floor. It's been almost 2 weeks. I still haven't seen anyone. I buried my wife in the backyard a few days ago. I don't know if I'm stuck in a parallel universe or if I'm in hell or what. I just know that I need help. Please God, if anyone is reading this, I am stuck in this godforsaken town and I'm afraid it won't let me leave. I fear it may come back. Please, if you can, help me. I worked security there for a long time. Between the long hours and close coworkers, it was like a second home to me. I'd been there longer than anyone else, so the newbies always came to me for advice. For the most part, I liked my job. We lived in a small area, so chaotic events were rare. I worked in the basement, just a morgue and some storage closets, so my shifts were always quiet and peaceful. It was a particularly slow night. We only had 2 bodies in storage. They were a mother and daughter, fresh from a murder-suicide. According to the report, it was a pretty horrific scene. The mother shot her daughter point blank in the chest, and then turned the gun on herself. The poor girl was only 8 years old. It was almost abnormal for the town. We lived in such a small area that the only crimes we really ever had were drug-related. I was filing paperwork at my desk when I heard a tapping noise coming from down the hall. This piqued my interest because everyone else working on the floor had gone home for the day. I got up to investigate. The sound grew louder as I approached the morgue. I went into the morgue and heard the sound coming from drawer number 6. I read the attached clipboard to find out who or what was in there. It was the daughter's body. I placed the clipboard back in place and the tapping stopped abruptly. Curious, I placed my ear to the drawer to see what I could hear. That's when the power went out. The drawer began shaking violently. Metal roared and clanged together as I jumped back and fumbled around for my flashlight. I shined my light on the drawer as it shook and the clipboard fell off. It began to shake open, and then it stopped out of nowhere. What the hell? I struggled for air as I shined my light around to make sure no one was there, messing with me. I was terrified. I looked back at the drawer and there stood a little girl in a white dress. I jumped, but tried my best to gain my composure. "What are you doing down here? Where are your parents?" I asked, gently. The girl didn't move. She stood in place, staring blankly past me. "Come with me. We'll go upstairs and try to figure this out, okay?" I gently reached out my hand to grab her and she let out a scream. I recoiled, startled. "Mommy, please," she pleaded, still staring at the wall behind me. There were tears in her eyes. I heard a gunshot go off, and blood began pouring from her chest. Her white dress began turning a crimson red as she collapsed on the floor. "No, no, 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 no." I cried as I dropped to my knees to check for a pulse. I felt nothing. My hands were covered in blood. I tried to radio for help, but all I could hear on the other end was deafening static. I sobbed as her blood spilled out on the floor. I turned around with my hands on my head trying to catch my breath and think of a plan. I turned around and she was gone. No sign that she was ever there. My hands were now clean. Wanting to comfort myself, and think rationally of the situation, I tried to brush it off as some sort of mental breakdown, that I would just take a few days off of work and it'd all be fine. I went back to my office to try and calm down, but all I could think about was the little girl. The fear in her eyes as she collapsed. I decided I needed a cigarette to calm my nerves. The power was still out, so trying the elevator was useless. I tried to open the door to the stairwell and to my horror, it was locked. I was stuck down there. The full realization of all the events leading up to this moment set in, and I began to panic. I couldn't catch my breath. It was in that moment that I heard a door open and close, and a strange wheezing/gurgling sound that I'd never heard before. I felt a chill down my spine as I was hit with an immense amount of dread. My blood turned to ice when I realized that sound was coming from a chemical storage closet. I slowly crept toward the closet as the sense of dread grew larger. I opened the door and a naked woman was facing the wall. "Ma'am, you can't be in here," I said. No response. "Ma'am, judging by your wheeze you could use some medical attention. Let me take you upstairs and we can get you the help you need." I placed my hand on her shoulder and she turned around. She had a hole the size of a baseball blown straight through her face. "Holy shit," I screamed as I turned to run. She was chasing me. I ran back to my office and slammed and locked the door behind me. She began pounding on the door. I used my weight to hold it shut. "If you're real God, I need you to help me out here," I begged. The pounding grew louder. I managed to move a filing cabinet in front of the door and hold up in the corner of the room. The pounding grew faster and louder. The filing cabinet fell over, the pounding stopped. I let out the breath I'd been holding and slid down the wall. I wondered if I was going to die down there. I needed to figure this out. I gathered enough courage to stand up and head back to the morgue. I was terrified, but I knew I had to do something if I wanted to get out of here. The faceless woman was dragging her body along behind me, leaving a bloody trail down the hallway. I almost had a feeling of calmness, like she wasn't there to hurt me. I opened drawer number 8, the one where the mother's body was being kept. It was the same woman laying there. "What happened to you?" I whispered. Suddenly, I was thrown across the room and pinned to the wall. "Please don't do this. I'm trying to help you," I pleaded. I then saw the same scene of the little girl play out, but this time it was much different. I saw the gun in her assailant. Her mother was standing in front of her. "Robert, please. She's just a child. She's your daughter." She sobbed. "That isn't my daughter. Now move," the man said as he pushed the mother aside. No, Robert." She screamed and reached for the gun. They struggled. She was shot in the face. "Mommy, please," the little girl cried. She was shot in the chest. The man placed the gun in the mother's hand. I was released from the wall. The power came back on and I fell to my knees and cried. This wasn't a murder-suicide. It was a double homicide. I stood up and walked to the elevator, staring blankly ahead, trying to process everything that happened. I went up to the ground floor and walked out. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. I sat in my armchair at home and stared at the wall. I didn't sleep well that night. The next morning, I called the police station and made an anonymous tip. Her ex-husband, Robert, was arrested on 2 counts of first-degree murder. To this day, I refuse to go back in that building, but I sleep better at night knowing that I may have helped bring peace to the dead.
Thank you for watching. The link to the Reddit post are in the description below. And don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more.